In the heart of the whispering woods, where the trees seemed to murmur secrets in the wind, there stood an ancient, abandoned cabin. Local legend spoke of it as a place of unspeakable horrors, where screams were heard yet never seen, like echoes of a nightmare trapped in time. The woods themselves were a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, always seeming to lead back to the cabin, no matter which path one took. One foggy evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting eerie shadows through the trees, a group of curious teenagers dared each other to explore the cabin. They laughed and joked, trying to mask their growing apprehension as they drew closer to the decrepit structure. The air grew colder, and a suffocating silence enveloped them, as if the woods were holding their breath, waiting. As they entered the cabin, the door creaked ominously behind them, sealing their fate. The interior was shrouded in dust and decay, with remnants of a life long abandoned. Each step they took stirred the air, unsettling whispers that seemed to come from the very walls. The group split up, each exploring different parts of the cabin, unaware of the eyes watching them from the shadows. In the attic, one of the teens found an old diary, its pages yellowed with age. As they began to read, the words twisted into tales of anguish and despair, revealing the tragic story of a family tormented by an unseen presence. The writing became more frantic, ending with a chilling message. It hears your screams, even when you cannot. A cold breeze swept through the attic, and the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Panic set in as they realized one of their friends was missing. They called out, their voices echoing through the empty cabin, but there was no response. The remaining teens regrouped, fear etching their faces as they searched for their lost companion. The cabin seemed to warp around them, hallways stretching and rooms shifting, as if the house itself was alive. As they searched, strange symbols appeared on the walls, glowing faintly in the dim light. They depicted eyes, mouths, and hands, all silent, yet seemingly screaming. The air grew thick with tension, and the temperature dropped, their breaths visible in the icy air. A sudden scream pierced the silence, coming from the basement, leading them to their next horrifying discovery. Descending into the basement, they found themselves in a room with walls covered in archaic, disturbing paintings. The images seemed to move, telling a story of a curse that had befallen the cabin and its inhabitants. In the center of the room stood a statue, its face contorted in an eternal scream. The missing teen was nowhere to be found, as if swallowed by the shadows. As they examined the statue, the room darkened, and the paintings came to life, their figures twisting and reaching out towards them. The air was filled with the sound of silent screams, overwhelming their senses. They realized that the curse was not just a tale, it was real and had claimed its next victim. They needed to escape before they too were consumed by the shadows. Rushing out of the basement, they found the layout of the cabin had changed again, turning into a maze of corridors and rooms that seemed to have no end. The whispers grew louder, guiding and misleading them at the same time. With each turn, the hope of finding an exit faded, replaced by the growing dread that they were walking deeper into a trap. In one of the rooms, they stumbled upon a series of paintings that depicted the cabin's history. Each painting was more macabre than the last, showing scenes of rituals and sacrifices performed by the cabin's former inhabitants, all in the name of a mysterious entity that promised them eternal life in exchange for their souls. The realization that they were in the heart of an ancient and malevolent force filled them with terror. As they continued their frantic search for an exit, the entity that haunted the cabin began to make its presence known. Shadows moved with a life of their own, and the temperature dropped so severely that their breath turned to frost. The air was charged with a malevolent energy, and the feeling of being watched was inescapable. In a room shrouded in darkness, they found a mirror. As they looked into it, they didn't see their own reflections but glimpses of the entity. A formless shadow with piercing, luminous eyes that seemed to look right through them. The mirror cracked, and a voice whispered their deepest fears, paralyzing them with terror. It was then they understood the entity fed on their fear, growing stronger with each passing moment. Determined to fight back, they began to search for a way to banish the entity. They recalled the diary from the attic and the symbols on the walls, piecing together a ritual that could free them. Gathering what they needed, they prepared to confront the entity in the heart of the cabin, where its power was strongest. As they started the ritual, the entity unleashed its fury. The cabin shook, winds howled, and the air became thick with a palpable dread. The teens chanted the incantations, their voices steady amidst the chaos. The entity materialized before them, a swirling mass of darkness and silent screams. They held their ground, pushing back against the darkness with the power of their combined wills. With the ritual nearing completion, the cabin began to crumble around them. The walls cracked, and the ceiling threatened to collapse. They continued the incantations, their words a beacon of light against the encroaching darkness. The entity wailed, its form flickering as it lost its grip on the physical world. Just as the ritual reached its climax, a blinding light engulfed the room, banishing the entity with a deafening silence. The teens, exhausted but alive, found themselves outside the cabin, which now lay in ruins. The woods were no longer whispering, but seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. They had defeated the entity, but at a great cost. The missing friend was never found, a painful reminder of the horrors they had faced. In the days that followed, the story of their ordeal spread throughout the town. Some believed them, while others dismissed it as an elaborate tale. But for those who had survived, the experience was all too real. They were haunted by nightmares, the silent screams echoing in their dreams, a constant reminder of the entity that had almost claimed their souls. They visited the ruins of the cabin one last time, a memorial to their lost friend and the horrors they had endured. As they stood there, a chilling realization dawned on them. The entity was gone, but the curse of the cabin remained. The woods still held secrets, and the silent screams were a testament to the darkness that lingered. Years passed, and the Whispering Woods regained their ominous reputation. Travelers and thrill-seekers ventured into the woods, drawn by the tale of the cabin and its dark history. But some never returned, their fate a mystery, adding to the legend of the woods. On a moonless night, a new group of unsuspecting explorers ventured into the Whispering Woods, drawn to the site of the old cabin. As they approached, a chilling wind rose, and the air filled with the sound of silent screams, just as it had years ago. The cycle had begun anew, the woods claiming more souls, and the legend of the silent screams lived on, a terrifying tale that would continue to haunt and ensnare the unwary for generations to come.